Hello everybody and welcome to Cinema Savvy. It's myself George bringing you a brand new movie review, and today we're of course talking about Elvis, released in cinemas worldwide and directed by Baz Luhrmann, starring Austin Butler and Tom Hanks. Now, this is a film that's going to be really fascinating one to follow over the coming weeks of box offices and maybe over the coming 6-7 months with award season. So there's an inkling of my initial thoughts. But before I get into some of that, I'm going to quickly bring the socials for you all at home. So if you're a fan of film, new releases, old releases, please do consider hitting that subscribe. And we do a lot of movie reviews, new reviews, older reviews, all that kind of stuff. And we really appreciate people checking out our stuff. We've obviously had Lightyear done recently, Top Gun and a few others. So if you're a fan of films, this is a place to be. And as I mentioned with this Elvis film, it might be around, it might be Oscars season. You might be revisiting this video in 6-7 months time. So stick around, there's a lot of other stuff coming on the way. And if you are new to the channel, please do comment your thoughts as well. Let us know if you've seen this film, if you enjoyed this film. If you're a big fan of Elvis, your background heading into it, were you excited, were you worried? All that kind of stuff is really fascinating to get discussions going, so please do comment that in the chat. And if you are new to the channel, please follow us on our social medias. We are now on Instagram, so Twitter and Instagram at cinema_savvy, Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy. And we have a link in the description to our Redbubble store where you can pick up some merch. I'm actually wearing the hat for once, just because it's been one of those weeks I've needed to wear a hat and not gel my hair for this video, because I've just got back from the cinema and I don't want it to look too much of a mess. So I might as well start talking about the film itself. If you want some initial thoughts on the build-up to this, obviously we're going through a bit of a biopic resurgence for musicians, or a trend, I don't know how we want to call it, but obviously following from Bohemian Rhapsody, got Rocket Man, I think there's a Bee Gees film in development, there's so many things. There was a Motley Crue one on Netflix a few years ago. There's a lot of things happening at the moment with biopics of musicians, and I know that there's been Elvis films before. I know that Kurt Russell played him in one. Obviously Elvis himself was a star and he's appeared in many of the things, many other actors have played him. Even we've got Val Kilmer as the ghost of Elvis in True Romance. So it's a really fascinating one, heading into this, and I really like Baz Luhrmann. And it's fascinating because 9 years ago I think it came out Great Gatsby. This is his first film since as well, which is madness. Maybe it's 8 years, maybe it's 2014. I hated that film the first time I viewed it. I don't know why, nothing clicked for me. I couldn't tell what it was, and I watched it again and I absolutely loved it. And I've always liked his Romeo and Juliet film, and I think he's Australia as well. I've not seen, I think it's Moulin Rouge, I've still not seen that, but I've always enjoyed him as a director because he has a specific style, but it's a style that's really good on the eye, and I kind of care about his characters and where the stories take him. So when they announced he was doing an Elvis film, obviously pre-COVID, this got delayed many years, I was kind of really curious. Okay, I could see Baz Luhrmann doing an Elvis film. You can have Vegas, you can have all that kind of stuff, and then obviously we got casting. He's Austin Butler. I hadn't seen him in much. I know he was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I know we're going to be seeing him in Dune Part 2 next year, and Masters of the Air coming out this year. A very exciting up and coming actor, and obviously Tom Hanks. You can't go wrong with Tom Hanks. We'll get to that, and yeah, that was it. That was my, I'm sold. I'm sold on the direction. I'm sold on the cast. I'm curious about seeing how they're going to approach this. Are they going to go in a Bohemian Rhapsody, let's just have them mime to the person and just do an impersonation, or will they let him act like Taron Egerton in Rocket Man? Will he be able to sing, to do his own thing? And a lot of this review is going to be talking about Austin Butler's phenomenal performance. And I'm going with my initial impressions. I really enjoyed this film today. I had an absolute blast at the cinema watching it. And it is worth knowing as well, I've spoken on the channel many times, my music knowledge is not what it is for film. My knowledge of musicians, that's probably not soundtracks, is limited. Songs, I can't name many albums off musicians. Obviously I've got bands and musicians I like that I go and see, but Elvis is always a fascinating one because everyone's heard of Elvis, everyone knows Elvis songs. Whether you've got relatives you've grown up with who are big fans, it's impossible to not know of Elvis. He is probably the biggest star in the history of music, one of the biggest icons of pop culture. And growing up, my dad's a massive Elvis fan, so he's actually watching this in the cinema now with one of my sisters. And I'm really excited to see what he thinks when we get home because, again, Baz Luhrmann coming to an Elvis film, it's not going to be that Route 1, this is how it's going to be. It's not going to be the same as everything before. This is going to be a very unique Elvis film, and that's what I was so excited for, and I think that's what we got from this as well. It was really interesting Just as my initial thoughts, seeing his approach to this, and I've just got to say, I was absolutely wowed by it. Austin Butler's performance is everything to this film. The direction is massive and very important, but nothing works without Austin Butler. When you're playing Elvis in an Elvis biopic at the forefront, and it's going through his entire life as well. It's going obviously, from when he's younger through to the Vegas days towards the end of his career and his final days and whatnot. And it's a really interesting view on him. That again, it doesn't just pop up with the words in saying this is what happened X amount of years later. And I've got to say, this comes all through Colonel Parker, through Tom Hanks. It's almost his point of view. And I think when the film started, I was a bit worried by that. I don't know if that's going to get me into the Tom Hanks performance, but obviously if you know the real life stuff, if you've seen this film, obviously it does a very good job in explaining it. But at the start, I was worried saying, okay, what angle are they doing? What approach are they doing? Because this could go wrong. And if it goes wrong, it'll be an absolute horror show. Because this is one of the defining stars of a generation that should have this biopic at the forefront. And we'll get to box office stuff later on, but I'm just going to talk about Tom Hanks quickly. So, Colonel Parker. Again, music knowledge is limited. I knew the story before heading into this. I've seen this film. I've never seen any archive interviews. I will do tonight. But I couldn't comprehend Tom Hanks in this role. I don't know if it was the fat suit. I don't know if it was the weird accent. I felt like I was watching The Child Catcher for 2.5 hours. Well, we know he's basically ruined Elvis's life, but it is basically just a child catcher, and I struggled with Tom Hanks. But again, I need to do some research. Maybe that was accurate, maybe it's not. It's something I've seen a lot of people criticising. If I'm being blunt, I don't think Tom Hanks was immediately the right person for this, because you can only see Tom Hanks wearing a fat suit. It's not like Gary Oldman when we got to see him playing Churchill, and you wouldn't know it's Gary Oldman and so many roles like that. I really struggled with Tom Hanks in this, and that's my kind of criticism. Again, maybe it's unfair criticism because I haven't seen the real life stuff, so that's a really big thing for me. And I just couldn't take him seriously at times. And it's not like it's a fantasy like what they did with Rocket Man. It's just so hard to take Tom Hanks seriously in this film. But moving on to one I did take seriously, again, Austin Butler. If he's not a household name in the next few months, he will be by the end of next year. I think he's going to be in the Oscar contention on the spot. I'd be very, very surprised right now if he wasn't nominated. I'd love to see him win. It's far too early for me to be doing Oscar predictions, but this is one that's going to stick around. And this is a film a lot of people are going to see at the cinema. It's going to be done over the coming months. You're going to get the award stuff. You're going to get this released at home on Blu-ray and DVD during Oscar season, all that kind of stuff. And Austin Butler's name is going to be everywhere. And it's a really interesting one because, for me, this whole film is his performance. And it's fascinating because we get to see the two sides of Elvis. We get to see the showman, the singer, the man that lived his life on stage. And then we get to see him behind the scenes, the troubles he had when he was younger, trying to fit in and being under the spell of Colonel Parker. It's a very, very intense performance from him. And it's just done in such an energetic way that I just think he carries this film, and he has to carry the film because he's playing Elvis. If he's not carrying the film's not going to work. How often do you get biopics where the main actor's just terrible? I'm sure there's some on the top of my head, but I'm not going to name them. But it's just one of those where I was just stunned beyond belief with him. And this runs for 2 hours, 40 minutes, I'm going to say. Heading into it, I was slightly worried about the runtime. Is this going to be too long? Is this just going to be, again, a Queen greatest hits? We're just going to hear all of his songs. We're going to see clips of him in the films. And what I'll say is that it's very well done. The narrative structure I like. I do feel that the middle act goes very slow, and it's almost not tiresome, but you're just wanting the story to get on with it. And when you get into the final act and it gets into his rhythm, it kind of makes up for the middle, because everything that took place in the middle is built upon in that finale. You can't have the impact of people's actions and performances without what we've seen for the sort of middle third of the film. And I think that's where I'm kind of locked in with it, is that when you get to the end of the film, you have this sense of, okay, now I've seen it and it hasn't missed out anything important from his life. There's obviously going to be a few things that aren't accurate. I'm very curious about some of the year dates, because they seem to group up some things that I'm not sure matched, or if they did match, it felt very stretched. And there's one or two really awkward things. I'm not going to get into the whole conversation, but when he meets Priscilla, they don't want to say her age, and then they just make a comment 3/4 way through the film, like, when you're 40 and I'll be 50, you'll still love me. And it was not uncomfortable, but it was just kind of like, we can tell you're avoiding saying anything like that. But I've got to say, the actress that played her, I really enjoyed the performance in it. And again, we got to see more of her life, Lisa Marie. And as somebody that said that isn't 200% familiar with it, I know a fair amount of this stuff from my family. I love the fact that the film really delves into the fact he couldn't ever perform abroad, and that's a really big thing for his career. That's something not many people know. Everyone probably knows somebody that in UK based, I guess, will say, "Oh, my nan or my grandparents said they saw Elvis in London when they were 4 or 5 or something. We used to get that out of school." Obviously, it was never true. I think he was only ever in the UK once, which was Scotland, for one day on a stopover when he was in the army. And speaking of the army, we obviously get we cover most of his life, so we see the rise of Elvis, we see the army barracks, his family stuff, the middle chapter where he moves into Hollywood, into acting, he gets older, in the Vegas stuff, and I've just got to say, the entire subplot with Vegas, it's the most interesting thing in this. It's heartbreaking as well to watch as a viewer when we know what's coming. And again, I want to do some more research behind the scenes, but it's so obvious to us from the first few minutes that Colonel Parker is the villain of the story. I know they play up an angle that he might not be, just for dramatic tension, but when you really think about the career he had, his legacy, and you see something like this and think he never got to go overseas, he never got to do any of that, and he always wanted to. It's heartbreaking, and I'm going to say I saw this at 5:10 tonight. It's not normally a busy time in the cinema. It was about half full for a Friday afternoon. That's mega. There's a lot of the older demographic which I've not seen at the cinema since James Bond, and that was quite exciting in its own right. You could hear people crying at the end. I thought it did a really good job, and I'm really excited to see what this film does with the general public, how people react to it. And again, I think Baz Luhrmann was the perfect choice for this, because with Elvis you need star, you need to have somebody that can bring that charisma. That when you've got this lead role in Austin Butler, how are you going to show him off as the lead aside from his performance? And I think Baz Luhrmann's the perfect person to do that. We've seen it being Leonardo DiCaprio and some of his other stuff, and I just thought he was the perfect person for this. And this is without a doubt a film I've really enjoyed. I'm probably going to go see it again, and I'd like to do a bit more research in between now and then. So that's going to do it for my review. Comment your thoughts on Elvis again if you've seen it, if you're a fan. I'm really curious to know what your thoughts on this, and as well, if you enjoyed this video, if you enjoyed this review, please do follow the channel. We've got a lot of cool stuff happening at the moment. The Steven Spielberg retrospective, we've got a lot of Kenobi stuff that's finished now, but on Wednesday we're going to have another video. There's a lot of things happening, so we'll be around throughout the year for new releases, old releases, all that kind of stuff. And speaking of new releases, there's a few Netflix things coming up, and of course we're then going to get Thor heading into July and some other things, so please do stick around. If you're curious about what videos we do when we announce them, we do announce them on our social medias. That is Facebook and letterboxd.com/cinemasavvy, Twitter and Instagram, cinema_savvy, and of course we've got a link to Redbubble in the description below where you can pick up some merch like this hat, like a few other things, so do check that, do help support us. This is a really fun channel to be involved in, and just this review of an absolute blast day. So once again, thank you all for watching. Be sure to join us on the next one, and take care.